Today's topic is Kiki's Delivery Service, Miyazaki's animation work back in 1989. This is the title shot, 1989. So it was made more than 30 years ago, in the midst of the bubble economy. And it's always in the people's top 3 choice of their all-time favorite Ghibli anime. Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, they enjoy more critical acclaims. But when it comes to people's choice, it has the simplicity back in the days, and it's about 100 minutes, maybe 103. These aspects make the film popular to many people. The film is based on a children's literature of the same, by Eiko Kadono. I brought the paperback version. Here it is, a children's literature. It was published in, well, the story was first serialized on some magazine. And the story was published as a book in 1985. So Ghibli adapted the story relatively soon after it was published. Okay, this film has so much to talk about, so I want to let you know before we begin that. It takes 2 lectures, today and next week. Today will be a beginner's version. So today I'll talk about things in a relatively easy form to understand. If you can, please enjoy while watching the broadcasted version that was on the air a few days ago. I know you recorded it. Okay, this is a fantasy taking place somewhere in Europe. A 13-year-old witch starting to go independent. However, it's not an ordinary fantasy. Miyazaki didn't make it like that. Thorough analysis on Kiki's Delivery Service, Beginner's Edition. So today, I want to focus on what distinguishes the film from ordinary fantasies. 3 extraordinary elements of Kiki's Delivery Service. First of all, it's a modern story. You see many opinions on this issue in sources like Wikipedia, but it's a modern story. Second, why Gigi talks and stops talking. This also draws the line from normal fantasies. Finally, subtext depicted with images only. There is a lot of this. So we are baffled when we focus on the lines spoken by the characters. Okay, so let's start from the top. According to Hayao Miyazaki, the story takes place in Europe, which has not experienced the 2 great wars, a parallel universe which has seen neither the First and Second World Wars. That's why we see oddly balanced technical and scientific advancements. I mean, for example, in the film, you see people watching TV, black and white TV. It seems that many people own one. So some say that the story is in the 60s. However, you see cars from the 1920s on the street and 1940s aircraft in the sky. It's more like an airship. But what people are wearing on the street, it has the 80s essence. The reason for this is quite simple. Miyazaki took a trip to Europe in 1988, a year before the film was produced, and designed the costume and cultural aspect in the film based on what he saw during the trip. So, I told you that the story takes place in the modern time, that is, 1989, to be more specific, when the film was released. And I also mentioned about the absence of the 2 great wars. It's because the wars entailed incredible technical advancements. So it is believed that if there was no World War I, of course, the tools used for the war would not have advanced so much, and airplanes would not have been put into practical use so much. Furthermore, it is often believed that if there was no Second World War, the development of large airplanes would have been delayed or may not have even happened. So this world has been met with slow technical advancement due to the absence of the 2 great wars. So the story is set in 1989, around the time when the film is released. I'll talk about this a little later, the reason why it's logical to think this way. The second one, why can Gigi the cat speak? A young witch can understand the cat, her familiar. This setting is written in the original book, and the book described the relationship as follows. A mother witch who gave birth to a girl gets a black cat born around the same time. So the black cat was born in the same year. The black cat is further described as a special one that only the girl can understand. However, when the girl falls in love, the cat leaves the girl to find a partner of its own. So, according to the background setting, Kiki's mom actually had a black cat of her own, which left her when she fell in love. This is quite a typical fantasy background setting, which was simply abandoned by Miyazaki. Miyazaki mentioned quite an unreasonable reason for this in the interview, saying, "I don't like cats that much. I don't like their faces, like they know it all." This was how Miyazaki dissed cats in a rather honest interview with Yoichi Shibuya for Rocking On magazine. Still, he does take good care of the cat in the Ghibli studio. So I guess the remark in the interview was a bit of a joke. The reasons why Kiki can only understand Gigi and later loses that ability are very different from the book. Miyazaki quite intricately made the change. Well, in guidebooks and analysis, some say Kiki grew up and ceased to understand Gigi. There are just so many opinions. You have to read the subtext from the images to understand this. There are some codes only Miyazaki uses. I'll cover this in the intermediate edition next week. The third one, this last one, I'll be mainly focusing on today. Too many subtexts depicted through imagery only. There are just so many of these. I'll give you some examples. For example, the night of Kiki's departure. Under the full moon, she leaves her hometown. Kiki, flying on her broomstick, meets a witch who started training earlier. So, this is her, quite good looking. Koji Morimoto was in charge of her character design. She started the training a year earlier, so she is 1 year older. They're flying in tandem. This elder witch tells Kiki that she's good at fortune telling and asks Kiki, "Do you have any special skills?" Kiki is so impressed. This witch has a much greater magic skill than Kiki. For example, Kiki specifically needs to use reaction force to fly. She finds this witch and tries to approach her. She leans left to fly toward her. She has to swivel to change directions, like an airplane. As she leans, the altitude temporarily drops, and then Kiki soars to approach the witch. Thus, Kiki can only change directions through a rather exaggerated motion. This elder witch, on the other hand, when she says goodbye and flies away from Kiki, she simply points her feet to the ground. She's sitting on her broomstick and simply points her feet to the ground. Like this, she needs no preliminary motion or a big movement like Kiki. Her broomstick soars naturally, then comes down to the other side of Kiki as she says, "Good luck to you," and then flies down to her town. So she can fly really well. So this elder witch is a nice person, telling Kiki good luck to you, and then flying down to her town. Kiki looks up to this good-looking witch, and she says, "I have to have a special skill." This is what you can understand from the character's line, but the town where this senior witch is working, you see the image of it, and this is the subtext depicted by the image only. The senior witch gradually descends to this place, this town. This is a quite obvious hint from Miyazaki. A small town with an oddly large amount of neon lights. And this center part, you see this? Just beneath the broom part, this windmill has red neon lights. This color is not randomly designated. The windmill is clearly designated to have red neon lights in the storyboard. There is only one place in this whole wide world with a windmill glittering in red neon lights. The windmill decorated with red neon lights exists in only one place. It's Moulin Rouge in Paris. Moulin Rouge, a cabaret in Paris, it has become quite a classy location nowadays. But in the 50s and 60s, when Miyazaki was in his youth, the place was just like Kabukicho. It was like Kabukicho for the world. So the town is a red light district like Kabukicho. Well, Miyazaki made the film for kids to enjoy it as a fantasy. But to we adults who took the kids to the theater, the mill with red neon lights sends quite an obvious message. Life is not that easy. That's the message from Miyazaki. It's also written in the storyboard. For this scene with the conversation with the senior witch, he wrote, "So easy to fool a country girl like Kiki." This note on the senior witch, "so easy to fool a country girl like Kiki," It's like an instruction to the animators. This detail impacts the nuance of the lines that the elder witch speaks. So we gradually understand why she's wearing piercings and other accessories. She says, I started telling fortunes about love lately. It means her clients are prostitutes, and the prostitutes' clients in a red light district like Kabukicho. So, in this modern time, in 1989, a naive 13-year-old girl trying to make a living in the city alone faces such temptations and risk. That's what Miyazaki expressed in this scene. From the kid's point of view, they can relate to Kiki meeting this pretty senior witch who's doing okay and get a little anxious thinking if she will be okay. But the adults are surprised to see where she's landing. We see what it takes for a girl to live in the city, so the scene is made to be interpretable both ways. Miyazaki really takes seriously the meaning of this naive 13-year-old girl leaving the countryside to live in the city and what kind of risk she might face. Now, this is Ghibli's textbook, which I refer to a lot. The most basic cited document for discussions regarding Miyazaki's works. This is something of an official document published from Ghibli itself. In page 74 of the book, quote, "This is not a fantasy about a witch from a made-up world. I'm depicting what women face in this modern society." This was Miyazaki's clearly stated resolution. Modern society, so it's not a story in Europe back in the 60s, it's now. This is what I have been talking about. The story Miyazaki was trying to tell was about a young girl coming to a big city from the countryside in Japan in 1989 during the bubble economy. She can use spells, so she can make it on her own. It's not this kind of happy story. I mean, we know that the movie has a happy ending, but there is a risk in what she's trying to do. For kids who want to see the happy fantasy stuff, such realistic details are only depicted in the image. Like this, the subtext is only explained by this image. This is what I meant by subtext only depicted by the image. So it's made to appropriately take the kids to the fantasy world. The audience is here good at fortune telling and telling fortune about love lately, but the image imparts a message less noticeable to kids. This pretty good looking senior witch. She just flies down to a nightlife spot, a red light district. She is shown descending there. I mean, it's like this senior witch is depicted to be falling very slowly. But Kiki can't see that and just looks up to her. That's what we see. And this senior witch tells Kiki, "Good luck to you." And Kiki cannot see what's behind the cheering words. Good luck to you. There is a meaning behind this casual word. It was her proud gesture, her word, "Good luck to you." Her tone is excited when she says she made it through a year, and she can almost go home. Well, life in this town was actually quite hard, and as a girl, she had to go through a lot. She won't show that. So in this scene, Kiki is like a schoolgirl meeting some lady who works in a hostess bar in Tokyo. Kiki is getting high on her Instagram photos, wanting to live like a celebrity without seeing the tough side of it. And just thinking it will be kind of cool to work in hostess bars, just fantasizing it. In Miyazaki's animated films, you see so many details and subtext explained through images and not with the characters' lines. Like the image of the Moulin Rouge I mentioned. So if you see something odd in a scene, I recommend you to always try to look into it. It's really fun to find out that the subtexts are quite meticulously made. Okay, Kiki's delivery service. I'm first telling you about 3 aspects that distinguish this from ordinary fantasies. And this was the first example of the subtext only depicted by image. So let's move on to the second example. Okay, the second example. Here you go. I guess these should do.